All right. What's going on, everybody? Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. And let me know how it sounds. I've had a couple of recent StreamYard videos I've recorded that the audio was not what I wanted it to be. And I have questions about whether it actually uses the mic input that I'm supposed to be using. So let me know how it sounds. I will try to pull up the comment section here as we get going. Found a much easier way to do that than I used to. Moderation helps everyone feel safe. Well, okay. We can moderate the comments if we need to, but hopefully everybody's nice today, right? There's not going to be anything like questionable going on, is there? I don't think. What's going on, guys? All right. If Tyler says it sounds good, then I say it does. Jen says it sounds good. How's everybody doing? If you are new to the channel, welcome in. Please do subscribe. I see Tyler has joined the B Shafe Daily gang. We do have the channel membership here on YouTube. A lot of fun when it comes to the Discord as well. Discord, I might need to make a couple new sections in the Discord for off-season talk. We always have the game day chat and things like that, but I'm pulling up the Discord now because I would like to drop a link. One thing about Discord is that link, they make me refresh it every week, and sometimes I forget. But I think the YouTube channel does have an active, up-to-date link, but I'm going to drop it in the comment section now. And can I put a star next to it? I think I can. No, I don't want to ban myself. That wouldn't be good. But let me know. I want to know your Cardinals comments and your thoughts after what we saw today at Busch Stadium. I will pin the Discord, so check the pin messages for the Discord information. And you'll also notice, if you're watching on YouTube, the link to Underdog Fantasy powering this here live stream. Just want to mention real quick that I'm proud to be partnering with Underdog Fantasy, my favorite place to play fantasy games. Check out their Pick'em. It's easy to play. You pick 2 to 8 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. If that sounds like fun, sign up with promo code BShafe to claim your free pick and your first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I cannot wait to see your entries. Must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or visit ncpgambling.org. Have to make sure we say that. So, what's going on, guys? And by the way, if you have questions about Underdog Fantasy, just let me know. But all the information, the promo code BShafe and stuff is in the description to the video. Want to get to the Cardinals stuff, though. Josh is here, Locomotion. We've got Brian. We've got Brett. We've got Aaron. What's going on, guys? So, obviously, Cardinals made some major announcements today. That's the way that Bill DeWitt Jr. began the press conference. But ultimately, it's not necessarily anything that we didn't know for the most part coming into today, based on reporting in recent days from folks like Katie Woo and Derek Gould that had stories out giving you kind of an idea for what to expect from this press conference. But I mean, I'll tell you what, seeing it play out and sort of finally seeing the Cardinals, because remember, last year, 71 and 91 didn't have an end of season press conference. So for today to happen and to see the way the Cardinals reacted to another season that didn't go their way, look, I get it that they had a winning record, but they had told fans, hey, be patient with us because we're going to get this thing back on track where it needs to be to a postseason. And obviously, there's the emperor has no clothes. There's nowhere to hide anymore from the fact that you have 2 consecutive seasons that don't end in a postseason berth for the Cardinals. So where does the team go from here? And how do they respond to the notion of, hey, we didn't really do what we told y'all we would do. We asked for your patience, and we didn't get there with a postseason berth this season. And what does that mean? Should there be repercussions for that from a personnel standpoint? And we kind of knew coming into this press conference that you weren't going to see anybody fired. You know, Ollie Marmol would be retained. We knew that John Mozeliak, based on reporting from earlier this week, would be retained. And while the coaching staff, the major league staff, is still kind of up in the air mode, did not drill down on committing to anything as far as that goes, the reporting would indicate that that's going to largely remain intact. So Cardinals fans are kind of left wondering, like, well, what is changing? Obviously, Heim Bloom is going to be installed as the POBO after 2025. But now he's sort of the POBO in waiting. He's going to hire a new farm director, or a new director of player development, to replace the retiring Gary LaRocque. We know that. We kind of did already know that based on Katie's report from earlier this week. And so you're in a situation now where it's like, well, what actually is changing? Well, the Cardinals are recommitting themselves to player development and making sure that they've got the infrastructure to get the most out of these young players, to put them in positions to succeed so that when they get to the big leagues, they're ready to contribute to winning baseball in St. Louis. But what struck me about today's press conference, and look, I'm going to read all these comments, and Eric has already jumped in with the super chat. I really appreciate Eric. And Eric has differing opinions on kind of some of the stuff that took place today than I think a lot of Cardinals fans do. So I want to make sure to highlight Eric's thoughts and talk about maybe what I agree with and what I disagree with. And it's okay. Let me know your comments. I think you guys have the potential here to drive the show today for sure, with some of the ways that this show could play out. I want to know what you guys thought and what your reaction was to what we saw today from the Cardinals. But as I think about the way that it played out, I'm stuck on the notion of how did the Cardinals fall behind in the first place in this area? And in this case, we're not talking about major league wins. We're not talking about the coaching staff at the major league level. We're talking about what the Cardinals wanted to talk about today, which was Heim Bloom is here to basically give a reset to our player development system and our infrastructure in the minor leagues. And one of the key quotes that I heard from Heim today was that ownership has greenlit. They've given the green light to invest in these areas that the Cardinals, as Heim was asked, well, what needs to be refreshed? What needs to be updated? And he kind of didn't give any specifics, but basically that could tell you that there's a lot. There's the overarching feel of the way that they do development throughout the minors that is going to need to be updated. Looking for my own tweet from it because as Heim said that, I thought it was notable. So I tweeted out, Heim Bloom says in his statement that the Cardinals ownership has given the green light to make, quote, real investments across the department as it pertains to player development. So that's going to be what they're doing moving forward. And look, they didn't make the playoffs this year. So in a lot of ways, today was an opportunity for the Cardinals and their team brass to talk to you, the fan, and say, hey, here's what you should be invested in. Here's what you should be excited about moving forward. And they're basically saying, we're going to strip this thing down in the minors at the lower levels and make sure we've got guys developing the way they need to and putting in the resources toward that end to make sure that can happen. The question is, though, and we all read Katie's article with The Athletic earlier this week, citing teams like the Phillies and the Brewers, teams that are have 12 to 15 to 17 full-time coaching positions scattered throughout their minors, roving instructors, people that are niche to specify helping young players with base running and infield defense, outfield defense, all of these aspects that other organizations have really invested in. And as Mr. DeWitt was asked about, well, how did the Cardinals get to this position in the first place? You guys have fallen behind. How did that happen to begin with? Where did that disconnect take place? I couldn't help but notice that Mr. DeWitt was pushing back in a lot of ways on the notion of a problem in the first place, which just that felt like circular logic to me. Because when you think about the reason the Cardinals held this press conference to begin with, it's because they were admitting that there wasn't, that they had gotten off track, that they had fallen behind in these categories. And for Mr. DeWitt to kind of push back on questions, I know Katie had a couple of good questions about that. And by the way the press conference worked is you had Cardinals PR there kind of calling people out to ask their questions, and it was cut after about 30, 35 minutes. I got a couple of comments on Twitter. People said, well, why isn't B. Schaeffer asking a question? Had my hand up. I just didn't happen to get called on. There was a bunch of media there, and I was able to ask a couple of questions of Mo. Afterwards, it was nice that he gave us another 15 minutes or so. After talking with the cat, which you guys might have seen on the live broadcast from Bally, we did all get a chance to talk to Mo a little bit more. And I did take video of that little session, 13, 15 minutes long or so, and put that out on YouTube. So if you haven't seen it, it's my most recent video on YouTube prior to this one. But that was one of the things that struck me was Bill DeWitt Jr. being asked, hey, how did the Cardinals fall behind in player development areas to begin with? And he said, well, I really don't think I agree with the characterization that it's been several years, kind of like nitpicking the sentiment of, well, how long has it been since you fell behind? To me, it read in a way that was a little bit tone deaf to the way that Cardinals fans feel about the way things have gone. I think what Cardinals fans wanted to hear was an admission of, you know what, I did under my watch. I let this proud franchise kind of fall behind in some key areas. I should have seen that this was coming because as the person who relieved Walt Jocketty of his duties in 2007 to bring in Mo and his group to modernize our approach to these exact matters. Now, 17, 18 years later, history has kind of repeated itself, and I let it happen under my watch. I regret that it has gotten to this point, but I am understanding of where we need to go from here, and I'm going to pledge to Cardinals fans to get it right and to start investing in these areas. That's just not the tone, I feel like, of today's press conference. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cardinals fans, would that have been a way that if you had heard that from team brass and team leadership, would that have gotten a little bit more buy-in from you, that I felt like that's the way that they probably should have handled it, is just to have a little bit of humility to admit, like, yeah, look, this is the way things have gone, rather than, well, we have a good core of young players. And actually, I saw the stat that our 6 youngest players played more innings than anybody else's 6 youngest players, which was just a very kind of convoluted stat that felt like grasping at straws of, hey, see, the problems aren't actually that bad. We're still developing young talent. It just felt like Cardinals were trying to talk out of both sides of their mouth in that regard, and it didn't really own the issues, which the issues are very simple, as Katie outlined in her article. Like, to me, this is the crux of the whole thing. If you don't have these young prospects, you might be drafting the right players, but if you're not putting them in position to succeed by having just an overwhelming amount of resources and coaching and instruction and teaching of the game to where they get to the big league level and know what to do, you're not really putting him in the position to succeed. It kind of reminds me of, as we talk about in the NFL, different quarterbacks that get drafted by teams that, oh man, there goes another busted quarterback. Well, what if it's the folks at the top that aren't really putting the quarterback in position to succeed? And we think it was a busted draft pick, when in reality, it was maybe more of a problem with development. And sometimes, and I know this is not a football show, but you see those players go to other NFL teams and they start to thrive. And you go, well, maybe it wasn't the player at all. Maybe it wasn't the busted draft pick. It was potentially the people in charge that were not getting the most out of that player. But with the Cardinals, it's a simple matter of, well, if these teams have 15 and 17 full-time staff members focusing on these areas and drilling down on these fundamentals through various levels of their minor league system, the Cardinals have 5 to their 17. It feels like the Cardinals, in the word of the day to me, in the word of the era of Cardinals baseball, is complacency. The Cardinals under John Mozeliak in the last couple of years have gotten complacent. And there was a quote from Bill DeWitt Jr. toward the end of the conference today that we played it on the KTGR Big Show this afternoon. I don't have it right in front of me, but it did kind of sell the whole thing, where he was kind of talking through how, the game around them has really prioritized these, and he kind of realizes as he's speaking, we've got to catch up. The Cardinals were winning, so they didn't feel like they had to do these things. And then next thing you know, you're not winning and you've fallen behind, and it's going to take multiple years to fix it. That's what I kind of want to drill down on. Eric, I really appreciate the super chat. Let me read from Eric here and kind of talk about his thoughts, because he says, I'm in the minority. When I heard that Mr. Bloom was going to have input on the offseason, to me, that signals he's pretty much in charge already. Minor league pitching is already showing results by them being third ranked in the minors. Let Bloom cook. And another aspect for Eric is, like, look, you can't necessarily expect the Cardinals to raise payroll in 2025 after a year of declining revenues. Right? As a business owner, that is something that would kind of stand to reason. But for me, the focus of, man, how far behind they've gotten on some of these developmental areas, and to kind of have the hubris of an organization that, well, we always are winning, so we're going to keep winning. And there might be people criticizing us in the public, but they don't really know what's kind of going on. And then lo and behold, they're doing a lot of the exact things that a lot of Cardinals fans had pointed to for a while and said, why can't you develop these players and get these young players to the point that they're able to contribute at the big league level in earnest and be able to turn into the stars of tomorrow? As Brenden looks to plug in his laptop so we don't die in the middle of the stream. That would be bad. By the way, I want to make sure I double check something real quick here, because I was locked in on my Lions. They've got the ball up 13. I think that'll be just fine. So just checking in on a little Monday Night Football. But that's sort of what was the takeaway for me today. Was also very interesting to hear. If you guys could have seen my face when I was sitting there on the right side of the front row and Mo said Mike Girsch is going to go under now the title of Vice President of Special Projects, I thought, okay, that's something. Like, of all the guys that are maybe, and nobody's really taking the fall for any of it, I think that's the point. But Girsch is the one that was in a prominent role in the front office. And a lot of the guys from that front office were in the back of the room today during the news conference. Girsch was not there. And noticing that before it started, I thought, if he's not in one of these chairs up front, and I know he's not going to be, I feel like this is Girsch getting whacked. And he didn't get fired, but he's not in the front office in the same role that he was in anymore, which is kind of what happens when you kind of pushed off to the side. Mike Girsch was Mo's second in command. So it is just a little bit weird for, like, all right, if everybody always, and look, I think people had misunderstandings about what his role was. He was a GM for an organization that had a POBO, which means he's an assistant GM. It's a fancy title for an assistant GM. But he was, under the direction and the corporate ladder below John Mozeliak. And, he's kind of being pushed to the side as far as all this is happening. And it makes sense because, look, Bloom's going to take over next year. And as Eric mentioned, he's already really going to have influence over a lot of the things that happened. Mo described it as, he's going to still be running the baseball ops, but I just can't imagine that there won't be collaboration, that there would be a move that's a move of size that happens that's going to shape the direction of the Cardinals that Heim Bloom isn't also fully aware of, invested in, and on board with, right? That just wouldn't make sense. And if it is the case, then the Cardinals have a lot more dysfunction than we even realize if they're going to bring in Heim Bloom. But I just don't think Bloom would have agreed to the situation in a 5-year contract that begins in 2026. I don't think any of that takes place without the understanding that, he's going to have his fingerprints all over the offseason to kind of I can't wink, but if I could, that would be a wink at the cat. But anyway, Hot Take Central listeners know what I'm talking about. Okay. Seth mentioning that other than Heim, the press conference didn't feel like a huge announcement of change, just Mo and the DeWitts being arrogant. Yeah, like I said, they didn't take ownership and show humility in the way that you'd hope to see. You start off with Mo making the joke, says, you thought you'd be rid of me, or what'd he say? He had a couple of different comments. When he was walking into the room before maybe even the cameras were on, I kind of heard him go, you guys thought maybe I wouldn't be here. Like, the thing about Mo, though, is that's, I think, just his sense of humor. And I do feel bad because I think Mo's a good guy. I think that Cardinals fans largely do not kind of vibe with what his sense of humor is and understand that that's just kind of him and a dry sense of humor, making self-deprecating jokes. He made the comment, he said, much to your chagrin, you're stuck with me for another year. Like, it's just his way, and it doesn't probably come off very well to Cardinals fans who are already mad at him and have the pitchforks out. But, like, there is like a dark humor to it all. And if I'm Mo and I'm in that position, like, you have to think of it from Mo's perspective. He knows he's not being fired. He told the cat, I could have been fired today. He didn't think he was going to be fired today. He knows that he is, he's a made man. He has got the support of ownership. And look, he's picked his end date, and his end date is a year from now. And that's the way that he's set it up to be. But I also think that if you're in that position, you can probably be afforded a little bit of confidence, almost a little bit of swagger. Like, I'm kind of untouchable. And so if I want to kind of crack wise or whatever, I can do it. And in his mind, it's probably true. Nothing he could have said today was going to appease Cardinals fans. And that's another point that Eric made, sort of in defense of the organization. Like, look, there's nothing they can say at this point that's going to fix it. You're going to need to show tangible change, and that's going to be the only thing that gets people fired up and back into support. It's just a question, though, and I will get your comments. I just have a lot of thoughts that I'm kind of getting out here. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, by the way. That's the way you can join the live chat. You'll be able to hop right into the chat once you hit that subscribe button, and like the stream too. We're up to 25 likes, but I think we can get higher than that. But thinking about the question that was asked of Bill DeWitt the third, and I believe it was by Derek, and the premise was basically like, what are you selling to Cardinals fans about 2025? We're spending a lot of time talking about the future and the minor leagues and making sure that infrastructure is in place. Obviously, we're not really going to see the impacts of that right away. How do you get butts in seats in 2025? Because as Mo reiterated to us multiple times after the press conference, he doesn't really know what to put on an expectation for next year because he doesn't know the revenue model. He doesn't know how much money they're expected to bring in, and that is going to influence how much money he has to play with. That's not a Mo decision. That's ownership's decision to decide how much money to allocate toward the organization and toward baseball ops and toward some of the aspects that Heim Bloom is going to be in charge with installing, which, by the way, like Heim saying that now ownership has greenlit these areas, which we're clearly very far behind. If you've got 5 full-time staffers and you need 15 to 17, I mean, that's just one area. Technology is another huge area. There's going to be a lot of ground that they've got to cover and to make up, but it's always going to come from ownership. And so did it take losing a couple of times in a row and continuing to try the same old thing for DeWitt and ownership to realize, you know what, maybe we do have to sort of reinvest in some of the money we pulled out of our developmental program after COVID, right? They had guys like Chris Carpenter that were part of it, didn't come back. They scrimped and saved and cut corners, I feel, because they felt like, we win. That's just what we do. That's just what Mo does. We trust him. And I think that's why ownership probably should be wearing a considerable amount of this criticism as well, not just Mo for kind of allowing things to fall behind. But to me, it happened under Bill DeWitt Jr.'s watch. So that's kind of, I know I'm a little bit stream of consciousness. I always am when we get on here, but that's what's jumping out to me first and foremost. I'm going to hop right in now to kind of read your guys' comments and react to them and respond to them. So get them in. Let me know. Jen, thank you for being here. And Tyler, thanks for joining the B-Shape Daily Gang, the channel membership. If you have any questions about how to join the channel membership, I don't think I put the link in the direct video description here, but very accessible on most of my YouTube pages. So make sure to check that out. And again, remind you about Underdog Fantasy, promo code BSHAFE, the links to sign up for that. If you like NFL, if you like NBA, different sports, I think even MLB, they've got MLB on there. So anything you want to do on Underdog Fantasy, it's a great way to play fantasy sports. And the promo code is BSHAFE. They help power this live stream here tonight. So thanks, Tyler, for joining the membership. He said after months of forgetting to get around to it, he's in the party. Allison, what's going on? Glad you are here as well. Wild Things said, never seen Cardinals fans so upset about press conferences in my nearly 40 years as a fan, and I remember the 90s. Yeah, it's a different time, though. Social media certainly allows access for a lot more fans to know how other fans feel. Right back in the day, you might have just seen your folks at work that were Cardinals fans, or out in public. You read the newspaper, but there's a lot of different ways now to be able to interact with people and sort of, I don't know if that kind of forms the hive mind of opinions from Cardinals fans, or if it's just one of those deals where now at least you're aware of what other people think. That's going to make it feel like there's more reaction to it than ever before. But yeah, fans were upset about today. I didn't see a whole lot that I didn't expect to see today from the Cardinals in the way that they announced things. I give them credit for at least announcing the successor. Like I thought they were maybe going to be even more vague and say, yeah, Heim Bloom's going to be elevated into whatever role. I don't even know if they really formally gave him a title. He's Pobo in waiting. He's not the GM. Mo said that he's going to be the GM and the Pobo, which was always the same thing anyway. So it's not that different. Again, don't get focused or caught up in the titles. But yeah, they basically did what I thought they'd do. And they went the step of, hey, well, at least admit it to everybody. Heim Bloom's going to run this team after 2025, which I think is good, because now anything that should be happening, it can happen with Heim kind of having his fingerprints on it, and nothing's going to happen that he's not at least aware of, right? They're going to be collaborative within that front office. So that is good. Is Mo just the Pobo in name only? Is it going to be Heim's ship to run? I think that would be overselling it a little bit. A lot of people would make the case, though, why not get rid of Mo now and allow for Heim to just take over? I think one aspect of that is kind of pertaining to what's coming. Did I mention Cardinals are going to lower payroll next year? And it may be substantially so. And that might not just be the decision of DeWitt and Mo and Heim Bloom. It may be a case where, look, you're going to basically commit to not raising payroll, and you're probably going to cut it a little bit. But that can be Goldie falling off. That can be, by the way, Goldschmidt's name not said once during the presser today. Is kind of a shame that we get nothing about the on-field product in the end of season presser. It's all about the organizational hierarchy stuff. We didn't get to talk about any of the players, anything like that. It's just going to have to be saved for, we get it from him during winter meetings or whatever. Elmir, welcome to the B-Shape Daily Gang. Really appreciate you joining the membership, my friend. Thank you guys so much for the support. Could not do all of this on YouTube and on the podcast without your support. By the way, if you like Spotify, B-Shape Daily is on Spotify too. So feel free to check that out if you prefer that avenue over YouTube. But yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there with Elmir joining the membership. Guess I got to make sure I get my water. But yeah, I thought the press conference was largely about what you would expect it to be. You just don't end up getting to see or hear anything about the players and the movement on that front. However, it was asked, like, these large contracts, what's going to happen to those if you guys are lowering payroll? And Mo basically said, hey, I'm going to have to talk to each of those guys coming up. And to me, the three names are Arenado, Wilson Contreras, and Sonny Gray. Talked about this in a recent podcast, B-Shape Daily, but I think each of those guys has a decision to make. And if they decide I would rather go somewhere else because this is not what I was promised, this retool, rebuild, I don't call it rebuild because it's going to be a rebuilding year. I think normally the reason the Cardinals are pushing back and they don't want you to call it a rebuild is because rebuilds can take 2, 3, 4 years, and sometimes you never see the other side of it. They'd prefer you to say retool. I saw Derek tweeting that out with his article earlier tonight. I feel as though if you want to call it a rebuild, call it what you want, because the Cardinals haven't given you much in terms of the latitude and the sort of retribution after failing for 2 years in a row to do what they said they were going to do and get you guys postseason baseball back in St. Louis. So because they haven't done that, I just don't think they really have a leg to stand on saying, well, don't call it a rebuild. No, we'll call it a rebuild, because that is what it's going to be, at least for 1 year. But the extent to which that happens, I think, is going to depend on the willingness of 3 veteran players to stick it out for a year and kind of see it through, or maybe look for greener pastures and say you can trade me away. If the Cardinals do that, man, you're looking at a really interesting offseason. And that's before we get into the guys like, well, what do I do with Michaelis? Because he's not been productive. Do they care about that? Or are they saying, we're paying him anyway and we're going to need some pitching, so keep him? Same thing with Matz. Little bit of a different tone for a guy like Ryan Helsley, who's got a lot of value. But if you're not thinking you're going to contend in 2025, what use do you have for an expiring contract on a closer who could potentially net you a couple of top 100 prospects? I don't think Ryan Helsley, after today's press conference, should be on the Cardinals next year. Not because I don't think he'd be one of their best players. He would be, but because I just don't think that that's from a business standpoint, the best way for the Cardinals to turn themselves around the quickest. Unless he's going to be a starter, then I'd be all in on it because I think you could maybe extract more value from that. But in just hearing the way that Hells has talked about that in recent seasons, I just don't know that that's something that's really on his radar anymore. Maybe it is. Maybe he saw it work for Jordan Hicks and it's something that he would want to pursue. But that just wasn't the vibe that I got hearing from him talk about that as recently as the spring. It wasn't really mid-season that I can recall that becoming a topic of conversation again. But he was kind of asked back in the spring about, hey, Hicks is going to be doing this. What do you think about that? And he kind of joked and said, I don't know about that for me. So we'll see. But I just think if you're the Cardinals, that's a piece that you do have that you could get some value out of and some real pieces back that can help you turn things around more quickly. Whereas guys like Sonny, look, they backloaded that contract. And you might say, well, that it means it's a complete shift from what we thought it would be. No, I say, honestly, it's the opposite of that because if they wanted to front load it, that would have been money that they would have had to spend, guaranteed spend it on the first year because you knew he'd be here the first year. By backloading it, yes, he's a little bit more difficult to trade in terms of what you can get back, but every dollar that you can make the new team pay him, if you do decide to trade him, is a dollar that you don't have to spend as Cardinals ownership. And you might say, well, that's going to mean they get less back in terms of like the prospect capital. Yes, that is what that means. But I think that's kind of where the organization is shifting its mindset. It seems it's going to be payroll focused and saving money focused. If you can trade Arenado and Arenado decides he doesn't want to be part of it anymore because he was told it was going to be a contending, building a championship kind of environment, and now it's not in 2025, just a few years into his tenure here. Couldn't blame him if he decides he wants to go somewhere else. I view the Cardinals as basically the Rockies of a few years ago. They didn't get top prospects back for Arenado. They got a lot of salary relief, and they ended up paying a good amount to Arenado just to guarantee they didn't have to pay all of it to Arenado. Cardinals might be in that spot. Contreras, maybe a little bit different, but just because it's a slightly lower dollar amount. But yeah, I don't exactly know the way that this is going to play out. But if you ask me what's the over-under on those three guys being around, it's at 2.5. I'd say I'd take the under. That probably at least one of them's gone. And if one of them goes, why wouldn't you, as one of the others, go, man, maybe I don't need this because they're actively, tearing things down for 2025. So that's another kind of aspect of today that I feel like we haven't fully explored yet. And maybe we're overblowing it. Maybe the Cardinals are going to go, look, we think that the revenue is going to be okay. We're not going to have to trade away existing contracts. But that's not the answer they gave today. The answer they gave today seems to indicate that is very much in play. So we'll see. Brett says, am I excited about what I think Heim Bloom can do to help our organization in the right direction? The answer is yes. Aaron says, at this point, let Quinn Matthews eat next year. They're going to trim payroll. Having a rotation of young guys, Palante and McGreevy included, could be the move. I think Palante and McGreevy are 100% included. That is one of the few names, McGreevy's, that came up today. He's in that rotation next year. I don't even know if it's a question. As long as he has a decent spring, he's in there. Trying to fill out a starting five without adding any new names from the outside. Somehow I keep forgetting that Eric Fetty is still on this team. And look, for $7.5 million, maybe he's somebody that they trade because you can get value from a team that would be using him to contend. I see the value in the Cardinals keeping him just to have bodies to fill out the rotation because he's a major league caliber pitcher and probably going to be one of the better ones they have in the rotation next year if they keep him. So I would say there is value to that because it's not impossible that the Cardinals can have their young players take a step forward. And they won 83 games this season. And you're talking about removing Goldie, who was underperforming. You're talking about removing potentially Arenado, who underperformed. You're talking about removing Sonny Gray, who was still pretty darn good statistically, but was not quite to the ace caliber that you'd hoped. How much are you really losing, I guess would be the question. And if a Walker and a Gorman, and I know it's probably not popular to even say Gorman at this point, he didn't finish the year as a relevant piece of this team. But if guys like that take a step forward, the one that they didn't take this year, and look, everything coming out of my mouth right now is not a prediction that these things are going to happen. But if I'm the Cardinals and I'm trying to sell the fan base on something, I would say stranger things have happened. What if all these young players that didn't step forward last year do it this year? and we get 150 games from Nootbaar, even though that's just never really been something that he's been able to do so far. And Donovan continues to play well. And Burleson is first half Burleson instead of second half Burleson. And Ivan Herrera gets to play a full season and show the impact he can make offensively. Like, you can start filling out a lineup and go, stranger things have happened. Pitching would be where it bottoms out. But if you say Fetty, Palante, McGreevy, like, imagine if it's Fetty, ERA 3.9, Palante, ERA 3.9, McGreevy, ERA 4.2. Maybe it'll be better than that. Michaelis, it was 5.5 this year. There's not a realistic way to say it's going to be a lot better, but let's just say it's 4.9. Let's say it's 2023 Michaelis instead of 2024. And let's say by some miracle, Steven Matz starts 25 games with a 3.6 ERA, which, like, could happen, but we have not seen it in 3 years. If you're the Cardinals and you're trying to sell that, what if all the stars align and you do that? That team's winning 83 games as long as the offense kind of takes some moderate steps forward too. So there's a world in which they could find that to all happen. I think median expectation, you trade away a couple of contracts, you trade Ryan Helsley, you're looking at a Cardinals team going into spring expecting 75 to 78 wins. And if the bottom falls out of the pitching because they don't go get proven $12 million veterans, they let Lynn walk, they let Gibson walk. Well, at that point, you could absolutely see a true, like, bottom 5 season. The Cardinals lose 90 some odd games, and they're just trotting Gordon Graceffo and Robertson out there to get shelled if they're not ready, or to succeed if they are ready. And, like, that's what it's going to look like. Quinn Matthews was the comment that started all this. That's another reason to think that, look, I don't know about starting Quinn Matthews in the big leagues next year. If he has a great spring, there's going to be the temptation to do that for sure. But at the same time, it's like, you don't want to rush somebody's development just because you feel like there's a spot open. But finally, what's going to happen for the Cardinals, and this could be a benefit of not having the $12 million 35-year-old veterans off of the conveyor belt of free agency to block younger players. When a Quinn Matthews shows he is ready, if and when a Tink Hence shows he's ready, which I have questions about Tink Hence as a big league starter at this point. I would say I'm a doubter of he's going to be able to be a guy that eventually is a 180 innings, 30 starts a season in the big leagues guy. Just need to see it from a physical standpoint that he's durable enough to withstand a year. The injuries have mounted up to where my hype for that is just on pause a little bit. I would only need one season of seeing it to go, all right, he can do it. But until we see it, it's kind of hard to project when we're filling out a hypothetical rotation for next year. Quinn Matthews, he has shown durability, though. I don't have questions about him. Threw a bunch of innings in college. There are a bunch of innings this year. Yeah, he'll have an arm injury eventually because they all do. But that, I don't really question, like, is he going to be able to get up to the workload? No, he probably will. So by middle of next season, could you see Palante, McGreevy, Quinn Matthews, Fetty, and the Cardinals are surprisingly 10 games above 500 because Gorman is on the higher end of what you ever thought you could get from him. Walker is doing the same. Mason Wynn steps forward. Burleson, Herrera. I mean, suddenly Donovan and Nootbaar are doing their thing. Victor Scott becomes a viable major league hitter playing great defense in center. Like, suddenly all these things are happening and you're going, holy crap, the Cardinals are one starter away. They're going to trade for him and they're going to do what the Royals did this year and buy. It could happen that quickly. I don't think they'll add payroll at that deadline, but there's a world in which all these things happen. More likely, it's going to be lean for at least 1 year. But it could be lean while being fun. And that's what the Cardinals are hoping to sell to you guys. I just think that message could have gone a lot more smoothly and could have been received a lot more openly if the Cardinals had said first, hey, we effed up. We got complacent, and our complacency caused us to maybe take a step back at the major league level just so we could fix the minors, which, again, you could make the case that that's just an excuse. Yes, 1 year of declining revenue is true. They do have to figure out the Valley Sports Midwest thing, which is not going to be called Valley Sports before long. Like, whatever that's going to move and shift into, who knows, over the course of the next couple of years. Maybe it's resolved sooner. Maybe it's resolved later. But those are the things that you're going to have to kind of wait on, I think, if you're the Cardinals. They want to give a direct-to-consumer product. DeWitt III mentioned it today. They'd like you to have an app on your phone that's Cardinals Baseball app, and you can plug it in and you pay whatever per month. It's probably going to be exorbitant, but you'll pay it. And those fans that live out of state that wish they could just have access, have it as an option, they'll pay it, and the Cardinals will make a bundle of cash from it. And hopefully they'll get payrolls back in line with where they belong relative to the fan support, which is still substantial. But we'll see. I think they're going to use the declining revenues as sort of the excuse to say, well, we're going to beef up the minors, but we're going to have to really cut back on the major league payroll because the revenues are spotty. I mean, the Cardinal baseball is a money printing machine, and so I think if they were to show good faith and say, look, you guys have supported us through a couple of years where we said we'd be this, instead we were that, and now we're going to support by saying no, we're going to still put a good product on the field. But they're going to take the easy way out, and that's going to be to take a step back. When in reality, for the price of a Lance Lynn, you could probably overhaul their entire minor league organization with the financial resources. You have to get the right people that you hire and put in place. That's not a given. But like if it's just a matter of devoting resources, spend 10 to 15 to $20 million, and that probably about covers it. And now you're able to not have to decline to the big league level because you probably should have been spending that money all along. You've been saving it anyway. So whatever. I just don't. I do not subscribe to the we're just revenue is a product of the payroll, and the payroll is going to turn back into the revenue, back into the payroll, and that's it. It's just a revenue machine that prints into the payroll. There are profits being made, folks, and I feel like the Cardinals. I think they should be willing to still try to put their best foot forward and fill the holes in the roster, but they're going to kind of take this route that says, if we don't win this year, maybe we'll learn about some of the younger players, and if they spin it well enough, I think people will accept it. But I just wanted to mention in the outset that I don't think they have to be doing this. I'm not looking at their books, but I think it's a very convenient sort of narrative to say, well, we have to take away from the major league payroll because we're investing now in the minors. No, you could have invested in the minors all along and then still be keeping the major league payroll where it is. Goldie is falling off. A Goldie size addition could be added, and then it goes up relative to inflation and stays in conjunction with where you were placed among the league, which is not top 10. DeWitt would tout, well, we were top 10. No, you weren't really top 10 this year, and a lot of times you're more like 12th to 14th. But it's a lot of nitpicking over. It hasn't been several years that we've been faltering. It's only been this length of time, and our young players they just do not want to take full ownership of it. But he's a billionaire. He doesn't have to. He owns the team. You can't fire him. So he knows that he's going to be able to say kind of how he sees it, and that's just a decision. As a Cardinals fan, you got to go, am I okay with that, or am I going to be hung up on that? Because the DeWitt family is owning this team, and they've done so very successfully for a long time. At least they are putting their foot forward to rectify some of the mistakes that have been made, taking accountability of those things and taking accountability of their complacency is not something that we heard today necessarily. But, maybe they could get away with not ever copping to it. And Heim is the right hire. And within like 2 or 3 years, the Cardinals are back and booming better than ever. Who knows? Ace said, I'm not happy about what was said today, but you have to start somewhere. And Jen says nothing earth-shattering in that press conference. David says, I respect they're doing something. PJ says you got to trade Helsley. The highest his value will be, and relievers are volatile. That's what I've continued to say. It's not about Helsley that I say trade him. It's about he is a reliever, and therefore you trade him. It's not because of anything like I think he's about to fall off. That's not how I feel. But I don't know. Relievers tend to do it. It's not about him. It's about the position he plays. Bill says, sorry, but don't trust Ollie to develop any player coming up. I asked Mo about that today. What do you like about Ollie being in a position where now he can have influence over development of players at the big league level as you're looking to maybe have a more long range plan? And he said, Mo told me, I kind of thought Ollie would be somebody that would someday be a farm director, but he sort of skipped that step and went straight to big league manager, which was obviously their decision. But he said his roots are in player development. And so Ollie's fired up about what this means for his role. And the Cardinals are confident in him. Cardinals fans aren't going to be confident in Ollie until they win games. But if we're admitting that all these other things were problematic in putting Cardinals prospects and young players in less than positions to succeed, then maybe it wasn't really, Ollie's fault. A lot of the things that happened at the big league level once those players got there. Again, I'm not convincing anybody of that. And it's going to be interesting how the narratives on that play, because look, odds are they don't have a winning record in 2025, but this organization doesn't seem to be in a spot to view that that's Ollie's fault. His contract runs through 26. However, it also makes sense to say, well, if Heim Bloom comes in and he makes decisions about who he wants to be the manager of his team, post 2025, post 2026, that'll be a Heim Bloom hire if they're going to replace the manager. For right now, organizational brass is certainly Team Ollie, so he's going to be around. There's no doubt about that, which I'd said over the past week. Has Girsch had a job at any point in his career with the Cardinals? Yeah, he did. It's just like any other assistant GM. Do you know the name of every assistant general manager with the Cardinals? Probably not. But that doesn't mean they're not doing work within the front office. He had an outsized reputation because all Cardinals fans knew his name, because a lot of Cardinals fans thought they knew what a general manager was, but they were wrong. They didn't realize that a team that has a Pobo, the GM is really not the GM. He's just a assistant to the Pobo. If they called him assistant president of baseball operations, there would be no confusion. But the titling got people tripped up and has been for the better part of a decade. Jeff says they've been falling behind since 2015, and that's a reason that I think it would have been nice to hear that from DeWitt today. Is like, yep, it's been a longer issue than just the last couple of years. But he went the opposite direction and touted how great they are, even as they're announcing that they had major infrastructure changes that are necessary. So, like I said, it was definitely some circular logic, but I wasn't surprised by the tone of the comments by any means. Tyler said, greenlit, then I got a commercial. Sorry about the commercials. I don't schedule exactly when they pop in, or do I even really know when it's happening, so apologies for that. Brett said, like I said up top, I could not be more excited that it's Heim Bloom doing the resetting. He's also just known for being the guy that traded Mookie Betts, so I'm afraid he's going to do that for us. He's not. Mozeliak is going to do that for you. That's the point I was kind of trying to make earlier, that Mo is in charge of this teardown. When people say, well, why not Heim Bloom right now? Why have Mo do it? Well, Heim Bloom got rained out of Boston, and people hate him because they think he traded Mookie Betts, which he did, because ownership told him they weren't extending Mookie Betts. The money wasn't there. So good luck, right? Heim Bloom is not going to be charged with what's about to happen. The atrocities to this roster are not going to be on that blood's not going to be on his hands. When they trade away Arenado and Sonny Gray, that's not going to be Heim Bloom. That's Mo, and Mo's just going to have to eat that. But they might be trading those players because, again, payroll will go down. They said it today. So don't blame the Pobo, whether that's Mo or Heim, for things that ownership are saying has to happen. That's what happened to Heim in Boston, and I think he got a bad rap for it, 100%. Jeremy said not only is Mo not leaving, but he's pulling double duty, Pobo and GM. Basically, just think of him as the GM, and now that has meaning. Again, before there was a Pobo, Mozeliak was the GM. When he got elevated to Pobo, an assistant GM assumed that title, nothing actually changed. Mo was still in charge. Mo is still in charge. However, he also kind of has to answer to Heim Bloom now, a little bit. Gary says, at least Bloom speaks to the media like a red-blooded human. Here's the thing. Heim Bloom, he's not going to give us nothing. He is very media polished, he's not going to put his foot in his mouth. Let's just put it that way. Like the questions that were asked about, hey, can you tell us, like, how bad was it? How bad was the developmental system of the Cardinals, and how crazy of a fix is this going to have to be? He just found a way to spin that into an answer that, I didn't really hear anything that came out of his mouth, because I knew it was kind of like just circular logic of, all right, you're not really going to tell us the dirt on like how bad it really had gotten, like you saw from some of the anonymous sources in Katie's article, but he still found a way to like make it sound good. You know what I mean? So he's very media polished. Eric, my man, you don't have to keep super chatting me, but I do appreciate the heck out of you. He said Mookie Betts trade was bad because of leverage. Bingo. Ownership said to trade him. So he's like, okay, I guess I have to trade him. Only team that would offer anything was LA, rock in a hard place. And here's the thing. The Cardinals have guys like that they're going to potentially have to trade, guys like Arenado. These trades will be so easy for Mo to make, though, because the agent can honestly probably make the trade. He could say, all right, Mo, here's who will take the contract. Here's who you need to talk to. Like, just get that going. But the other side of that could be, as Arenado said toward the end of this season, he said, I don't want to be a clubhouse cancer. I want to build into these young guys. Maybe he's invigorated to be somebody that can lead the Cardinals into the next iteration, and he can end up a Cardinal Hall of Famer as a result. Maybe there's value to Arenado in that. I can't speak for the guy, right? So we'll just have to to wait and see what it looks like after Mo has the conversations with each of those players. If I had to guess today, and look, don't put me on the spot here. If I had to guess today, Sonny Gray is not on this team next year. If I had to rank it, I would say most likely to be gone is Sonny. Second most likely to be gone is Arenado. Most likely, I guess, technically stay would be Wilson. But that's very uneducated, just speculation. And I think at least one of them is gone. But that's going to come down to their personal decisions and how the Cardinals can maneuver, potentially moving those players. But I don't think all three of them will be here. And as far as Michaelis, like you could literally shake Michaelis's hand and say, it's been real. We're paying you your money. Nobody wanted your contract, but we're going to give your spot to Gordon Graceffo. And I would go, yeah, makes sense. Or they could say, we could do a lot worse than somebody who's going to, eat it for 30 starts and take the ball. And if he stinks, he stinks. But if he's good, well, hey, he's been good before. So maybe we luck into something and we're paying him anyway. I could see the Cardinals going that route because for as much as we do want to see young players, if they're really going to tear it down, you also remember how obnoxious it was to watch 2023 when they literally ran out of innings. So they had guys like Andrew Suarez and Casey Lawrence and that whole crew coming up just to eat innings. You're already paying Michaelis to do that. So would it be so bad to have him around as a veteran, keeps the clubhouse light, is a good dude? Like I could see the Cardinals doing that. For people like Wilson Contreras who said, hey, 1 through 9, we've got a lot of holes. Today was not the press conference for you. Today was not the press conference for Wilson Contreras to feel good about their chances to win in 2025. That conversation with Mo is going to have to happen, and boy, to be a fly on that wall to hear kind of Wilson's reaction to it. And look, I can't blame him, man. He's a fiery, passionate guy, so I bet he's going to have some thoughts. And I can't blame him one singular bit, man. I'm definitely Team Wilson. He thought he was going to come here and be the missing piece, and instead he came into a situation that was far more dire than he could have realized. Josh says, Brenden, curious if you think the Cards will offer the QO to Goldie. Not sure if the payroll decrease would indicate that that's a possibility. Would Goldie want and get a multi-year deal elsewhere? I would say unlikely to get a qualifying offer, in my opinion. Just because, I mean, what is that going to be? 20 million, 21 million, whatever it is. If he happens to accept it, you got to be darn sure if you're the Cardinals, if you offer it, that he's not going to take it if you're planning on decreasing payroll. And I just don't think that's a gamble DeWitt would make necessarily. And I also don't know how that works. If you can ask him, hey, you going to take this? If not, because if you're Goldie and you're Goldie's agent, you're like, we're not giving you that info. We'd rather not have it, the pick attached to us, because then we know that whatever Goldie's market is from another team, they're going to have to think about that value proposition of signing him and losing the pick to do it. I don't think they'll offer it to him because of the payroll thing specifically. Otherwise, I do think Goldie could get a 2-year deal, maybe even a 3-year deal. But we'll talk about in a podcast. Bob Nightingale's reporting that the Brewers are maybe interested. You talk about a nightmare scenario for the Cardinals just having to eat it. To have Goldie go to Milwaukee, which is right now the pinnacle organization of the NL Central. They've got the 17 full-time staffers roving throughout the minor leagues. The Cardinals have 5. They basically said, Okendo can do it. It's like, Okendo is great, but he's not 17 people's worth of great. You have to have the resources, and you have to give him that help. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. It's like, okay. And then Goldie goes to that team. I promise you he bounces back. 800 OPS or better, lock it in. And probably 30 bombs. I'll never forget that opening series in Milwaukee that one year. I think it was his first year as a Cardinal. Cardinals opened in Milwaukee. It was snowing outside at the end of March. But he had a 3-homer game, if I'm not mistaken, in that ballpark. They used to call it Miller Park. Anyway. Yeah, I would say lean no on Goldie, but, I really don't know anything. Mo did not, and they didn't really tell us anything about personnel stuff like that today. Jen says, looks like we're not going to get anything new, exciting news, and the changes are going to be slow to notice. Yep, that could be. That really could be. Tyler says, I'd rather they just owned up to us. I thought there would have been value in that. The messaging matters. The Cardinals have been failing messaging for a little bit too long, in my opinion, and they had a chance today, and they, did the predictable thing with that chance. And Brock, to that point, says this management group may have the worst messaging of all time. Yep, it's not a strength of theirs. Somebody made the joke, Brenden, for new PR director. I promise you that's not something that anybody with the Cardinals wants. But I do think that there should be a willingness from somebody like Mo to listen to what those PR folks have to say. And if there is a way that they can help with messaging, I would like to think that Mo would be open to that. But I don't know what that dynamic is. But I do think that his messaging has been I don't know if it's stale, but it's just been kind of off for a while. They have great messaging when they're winning, right? It's easy to talk about a winning team, but as you're having to answer difficult questions, it doesn't look as good. So that is what it is. Cardinals are unable to be humble compared to the other teams in town. It's jarring. That's from Ryan. Yeah, I mean, it's different than what the Blues have said. The Blues are like, Army's like, I will go to the ends of the earth to fix this thing, and I've allowed it to go, from here. You can sense urgency in the way it's talked about there. The Cardinals, I don't think their fan base gets a sense of urgency from this organization. Call me crazy. Yo Mama says maybe a Cardinals casino under the stadium. No, but Bill III definitely did say they're hoping sports betting will pass. So if you want the Cardinals to be good again sooner and get more revenues so that they'll spend more on payroll, November 5th is your chance, because they're very open about wanting that to pass, because I think it can be a revenue stream for them. I don't know if that means they would get a sports book in a casino at Ballpark Village. I don't know exactly what that would entail. There'll be the licenses for sports books and whatever that ends up being. But yeah, that's definitely something the Cardinals want. So there's no question about that. They were open about that today. Bill wants to get some players that can hit, as Wilson said, too many holes 1 through 9. Bill, they're going the opposite direction, my man. Turn back. They're not adding players. They are subtracting them this offseason. Judd says player development in the minors is the problem. How does that explain players going to other teams doing well? Or franchise players like Goldie and Arenado underperforming? Well, the Goldie and Arenado thing maybe is a different issue than players coming up and then underperforming and then going elsewhere and being good. But maybe it's just the environment, right? The Cardinals have had this gotta win environment. And look, other teams are trying to win too. But if the vibes are off at the coaching, look, the thing that kind of goes under the table of all this is the major league coaching staff. What happens to them? Mo said he's going to have to talk with Ollie about that in the coming weeks. I don't think the whole coaching staff should be back. I don't see how you don't make some changes to the hitting staff, unless they're just on scholarship and performance doesn't matter. They should be up for discussion, and there should be changes made. Whether that's firing Turner Ward or changing the hierarchy of things, assigning Ward. Yeah, let Ward be that roving instructor through the organization that does this or that. And they bring in a new hitting coach. There are a number of things you could do if you wanted to get creative, and we're far past the point of hurting people's feelings because they're good people. That just doesn't matter. The production has not been there. So, there is the notion of changing for the sake of change at a certain point. And during the season, I was reluctant on that because I thought, these are good people doing their jobs, they're doing the best they can. They believe in them. Let's let them have their season. And if maybe we're wrong, maybe the people that are criticizing Turner Ward are wrong. We had the season, boys and girls, and the Cardinals. Look, I'll go ahead and look it up, what the final stats were. But the season doesn't lie. And so when the Cardinals go through 162 games and they finish 22nd in the league in runs scored, you can't tell me that group succeeded offensively. So, yeah, I think Turner Ward should probably be reassigned in a way that Mike Girsch was reassigned, in that Girsch really didn't necessarily do anything wrong. I don't know that he added a lot of value in his role, but Cardinals were 15th, tied for 15th with the Rockies in OPS, and they were 22nd in runs scored. Their final tally, I'll get the tally on runners in scoring position for you. There's no spite in looking at end-of-year stats because there's no games left to be played. So you can't be the Cardinals and tell me that this is, how could you talk about people's jobs? And the 27th in runners in scoring position batting average. They can't come back with the same hitting staff. I think that's a slap in the face to fans if they do. If you like Turner Ward and think he's good, okay, offer him to play out his contract as a roving instructor where he goes through the minors and teaches if you don't think he's suited to that role, then maybe you should ask about the relevance of his role at the big league level and what you guys are getting out of that as an organization. I don't know Turner Ward to know that this is right or wrong. I just know the stats. And at a certain point, coaches have to be judged on their stats. I often think sometimes hitting coaches are made the scapegoat for things that aren't their fault. But at a certain point, you also need to maybe just mix up the message and have somebody else delivering it in order to try and find different results. Oh, but Goldie and Arenado like him. It doesn't matter. Functionally, that serves no purpose if the results aren't there. Goldie's not even on the team anymore. So just some thoughts about that where it's look, man, I get these arguments throughout the season, but if you're going to sell that to the fan base, you better be damn sure that you're doing the right thing. And there cannot be another 2-year waiting period on improving the offense. I don't care if you're able to spend on it. in free agency. You're going to have to find a way to improve that if you're going to say, no, this is the coaching staff that ought to be here. And look, Ollie Marmol is the manager, and they've got faith in him. If you're Mozeliak or if you're Heim Bloom, if you're these other folks, you might say, look, man, I know you like your coaches. Why is it that the coaches have not been able to get more out of these players? There has to be some sort of way that they are evaluated. And if not, then it's kind of the whole thing does end up feeling like a sham. I can understand how fans would feel that way. Coaches John and Dean say, I don't like Girsch being the patsy for them. Seems he's taking shrapnel for most decisions. He is and he isn't. I think it's more just a numbers game where they're like, all right, we don't need another person in the front office, too many cooks in the kitchen at that level. And since Heim Bloom is going to obviously be very instrumental, it would have felt like kind of a joke to have Girsch around because his influence would have been, if you wondered before what he did, you certainly would have been wondering in a year where Heim Bloom was added in a role effectively to replace Girsch. Like once you're Girsch and you're not Mo's successor, there's not really a lot left for you to do in that front office, if that makes sense. There was maybe a point in time where if they would have continued to win and had continuity, maybe Girsch gets handed the reins. That didn't happen, and so that's where we are. Gary asked if it seemed like the press conference was to try and quell the blow of Katie's article. No, I don't think so. I think Katie's article told you, based on her reporting, what was coming in the press conference, and we got a lot of those things that ended up happening. Eric said, again, the Cardinals pitching in the minor leagues is ranked third in all baseball after 1 year of Bloom working with it and putting a stamp on it. The guy is the reason the Rays were stacked. Yeah, I think if there's one thing to like, it's his ability to turn around an organizational pitching staff, because I do think that that's something that Heim Bloom was good with the Rays on. And you look at the Red Sox, I think that was another aspect of churning out some good pitchers with them for the few years that he was there. Shilu asks if there is a succession plan for Bill DeWitt ownership. Safe to assume that Bill III will be given principal ownership of the Cardinals, and if so, do we have a timetable? No timetable on that. They cut off the press conference. I bet if they would have given us an hour, that would have been asked. If they've thought more about kind of what that timeline looks like, it will be Bill III that will be the chairman eventually. It wouldn't surprise me if it happened at the same time that Mo leaves. Could be a year, could be more than that. But that remains to be seen for sure. George notes that if ifs and buts were cookies and nuts, every day would be Christmas. I thought it was candy and nuts. Candy and nuts. Mother Lover Jones says, so Heim is the hatchet man. No, Mo is going to be the hatchet man to cut down this roster, and then Heim is going to be there to pick up the pieces. But again, he is going to just not have to take the blame for Mookie Betts trade 2.0, which if I'm him, that would have been a condition of my hiring. Like, I'm not going to be the guy to do this because I've seen what people say about the guy that does this. You made this mess. You do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not touching that. I'll hire your farm director, your director of player dev, and you trade the guys. Okay? And I'll pick it up next year where you left off. Bill mentions that Josh Jacobs said that for all the Michaelis starts, we were 50% win-loss. Yeah, they won about half the Michaelis games. They won about half of all their games. So, Michaelis did have a knack to pick up quality starts, and then when he was bad, he was real bad, and you were going to lose. But a lot of his quality starts, the Cardinals did win. So there is logic to, I think, bringing him back, but only because of the priors. The priors are he's already under contract, so what are you going to do, right? If no one's taking the contract, you might as well have him pitch for you in a world in which you don't have enough pitching prospects knocking on the door to devote. Now, if you start to have a Quinn Matthews knock on the door, could you DFA somebody midseason next year if it looks like you've got the five to kind of get you going, especially if you're bordering on contention and there's one guy sticking out like a sore thumb in the rotation that's not cutting it? Yeah, you can make that claim. Yo Mama says that Wilson would waive his no trade potentially to go to the Brewers. He can play first with his brother behind the plate. Yeah, I don't see that personally, but I hear you. Eric says to leave Blake alone. He's fine. Hitting is the change that is needed whenever the hitting coaches are overrated. Yeah, I don't think Dusty Blake is going anywhere. Pitching, look, if you're going to look at the rotation and say the rotation ranked too low in ERA, do you think it was Dusty Blake ruining Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis? No, those are veterans that are going to do kind of what they're going to do. They're going to have very little not interaction. I'm sure they interacted with Dusty Blake, but he's not having a huge impact on those players. He's just not. They're set in their ways. And that could be a nice thing to have a bunch of young pitchers that Dusty Blake can kind of mold into the next generation the way that Dave Duncan once did. And maybe that's the opportunity for Dusty to really shine. We'll see, man. Quinn Matthews, minor league pitcher of the year, which is Bloom working his stuff already. Yeah, and that's Randy Flores, too. I mean, that was a great pick in the 4th round. I remember the moment they picked Quinn Matthews, I said that was an incredible pick because he was, all I knew about him is he threw 156 pitches in one game for Stanford last spring. And like, heck yeah, man, that's that, not last spring, but spring of 2023. And like, all right, that's a dog. That's somebody that's got that dog in him. He wants to pitch, man. He doesn't want to be out after 5 innings. That's not him. He wants to throw that whole game. So I respected that. And turns out he's made a leap greater than I ever could have anticipated as quickly as it happened. All right, checking things out. We're an hour into this. I appreciate you guys for listening. We're up to 59 likes. If we can get it up to about 75, that'd be even better. Appreciate you guys for jumping on and liking and following the page and all that good stuff. But about an hour in, I want to just make sure there's no... I'm sure there's some chats that I've missed. I've always told people, though, at bschaefer12 on Twitter, make sure anybody that misses that, DM your questions to me that I don't get to. I don't mean to miss anybody's questions, but there's so many of them that sometimes come through. Chan the Man says, personally, would be okay with all the vets moving as long as it would mean the ownership would make that a more permanent fixture to have a low payroll. Not sure how much I trust that. Right. Once you kind of open the door for that, then it's like, well, you know, we kind of like it down here at 90 million. And that could be a difficult thing to kind of bounce back from, for sure. Waze likes my voice, so thank you. It's the only one I've got. Eric mentions that Blake does not get a lot of credit for Libby's growth, McGreevy, Fernandez. Blake isn't the sexy ex-pitcher, you know, like a Mark Pryor or whatever, but the dude can coach. And he said, if Kyle likes him, I like him. Yeah, man, I think Dusty has value in this organization and honestly has taken a step forward this year, whereas, yeah, we're circling the hitting coaching staff going, what happened there? Why can't they get that side of things to be up to speed? Now, keep in mind, though, a lot of people hated Dusty Blake after 2023, and I feel like he acquitted himself more nicely in 2024. Who's to say that Turner Ward and his staff couldn't do it after one more year? But, man, this has been multiple years of this hitting philosophy. Not only do the stats tell a story, but watching with the eye test tells a story of the approach sometimes that these players have had, and it can be very frustrating, I think, for fans who are impatient. They want to see something change. So we'll see. But also, will they make a lot of coaching changes for a year that they're not prioritizing winning as their top priority? They're prioritizing development. And if they think these guys are maybe going to help with development, like I'm grasping at straws, but they're going to try to spin it in some way, form, or fashion. But I don't know that Cardinals fans are going to sit through another year of hearing how hard the coaches are working toward fixing the problems when they're not getting the results. Respectfully to everybody who would be involved in that, it's just very difficult to think that Cardinals fans are going to hear that and go, all right, yep, sounds fine. I buy it. Attendance stuff is going to be so interesting next year. It's going to be very interesting. Joe said, outrage aside, I like listening to Bloom speak. Seems like a much more intelligent, likable guy. You've bought into him. Yeah, look, like I said, he's very eloquent. He's media trained. You can tell that he's polished. And I just don't see him sticking his foot in his mouth. He did very well today, I thought. Granted, does that mean we're always going to get a lot of like concrete detail from him when we've got burning questions? Maybe not. I think he's going to be very adept at keeping things close to the vest, but that can be good in his role. Sometimes, it's all about the messaging. So as long as you're in charge of the messaging and you're controlling it in an effective manner, that can be enough. I might not love it from a media perspective because we'd like the questions to be answered that get asked, but hey, I can respect the hustle. I can respect it. Sober Soup. Fans want to see a baseball team with an identity. I think a team of young guys does. Bill the Third said we're going to bring in some new things to the park. Like this guy's tone deaf. Yeah, look, I thought, okay, Bill the Third is in charge of the business. That's his area of expertise. So for him to speak on baseball aspects of it, maybe would not be the right guy to answer that question. But it was posed to the DeWitts, and then Mo kind of jumped in, I think, as well. Look, the optics weren't great. When you're asked, hey, what are you selling to Cardinals fans? What's the messaging of why they should show up next year? And you say, well, our game day experience is really going to be vamped up, and we've got some special perks for season ticket holders, like extra bobblehead. Like that's the kind of thing that we automatically go to. The optics of that were not great as an answer to the question. I agree with that. Nathan says, I'm late, so maybe it's been answered, but what exactly is the utility of having Mo remain as the Pobo next year if Heim is going to be taking over anyway? Nathan, we did kind of touch on it, so make sure to go back and watch and listen. But the short version, and look, this might not be their explanation. It might not be like the legit reason, but I also kind of think of it as Heim Bloom had to trade Mookie Betts as his first order of business in Boston, and they ran him out of town on a rail a couple of years later. And a lot of fans look at his time there and say, oh, he's the guy that traded Mookie Betts. If I'm Heim Bloom coming into this new role, I would say, you're not making me trade Arenado. You're not making me trade Sonny Gray. You're under contract, Mo. You do it. You put that on your ledger, not on mine. I'm starting with a clean slate. And I think that might legitimately be part of it. Look, this is happening one way or another. It wasn't Bloom's fault in Boston when that happened because ownership told him we're not signing Betts. The Cardinals ownership is saying we're lowering payroll. Let Mo be the one to kind of bite the dust on that and eat it because the public perception of him is already pretty low. Heim Bloom is going to come out, smelling like a rose because he won't be the ones to have traded away their brand new pitching acquisition, Sonny Gray. He won't be the one to trade away Arenado, who was supposed to be the face of the franchise for a long while. So that could be one of the aspects of the utility to have Mo remain on. Also, Mo and DeWitt are tight, and it would be embarrassing to fire him. Doing Mo a favor. That's what it's gotten to. Mama says, no way Michaelis takes a buyout. No, I don't think he was. And Elmir said he can be offered a buyout. No, there's no such thing as buyouts in baseball, really. I think it's basically you pay him, and that's the way contracts work. He's being paid. Might as well have him pitch, is the way the Cardinals might view that. We'll see. Brian said, so glad to hear that I'm not the only one thinking that. Yep. Okie dokie. Let's see here. We are definitely over an hour. Clay says, I went back to the beginning, but love these moves. Not scared of the rebuild word. Lean into it. We'll be better off down the line. That could definitely be the case. It's not going to be fun for the time being, but yeah, I could see it. I could see it ultimately being something where by July we're going, holy crap, how about these young kids? How about, how about these guys that are taking steps forward? Maybe it works out, Cardinals fans. What's your level of interest going to be? That's going to be a question I ask a lot throughout the offseason to kind of gauge where people are. Eric wants him to leave Walker alone in right field. Moving him now is more detrimental. Leaving him there would be the play. He has progressed in right field this year. Let him keep growing. They may be willing to do that for a team that is not really like prioritizing winning as their number one goal. You could see a world in which guys that in past years would have been traded away only to blossom elsewhere are now going to get to play through their struggles for 162. That could absolutely be something that could end up happening. We'll see. We'll see if it does take place. Dealing the cards. What's up, gang? We're actually about to wrap up because it's getting late and I got to post this thing. We'll repost it on the Spotify feed for B Schaef Daily as well as the YouTube channel just in case some people don't click the live stream tab to know we did one. We'll repost this whole thing. But appreciate you guys. You kept mentioning if we'd be okay with more Mizzou content on here. Would love to see videos for the upcoming Mizzou A&M game, the rest of the season in general, while baseball's in the offseason. Yeah, I've gotten so dang busy the last few weeks. I want to do that kind of stuff, Chan. And I'll actually be in College Station for that game. So if any Mizzou fans are traveling, hit me up. I'll be down there. Might still need a ticket. Yeah, Eric said the baby waking up anytime is a threat. Eric, would you believe that, man? I can't even keep calling him a baby now. He's 2. He's like a person. It's crazy how that has happened so quickly. Feisty Brenden with Missouri stuff. I don't know how feisty I get. On Twitter, I do. 100%. I'm a Missouri fan. I'm not a Cardinals fan. I grew up a Cardinals fan, but now I cover the Cardinals from a professional standpoint. I do a radio show about Mizzou, but I am a Mizzou fan through and through. The columns are tattooed on my back. That's not a joke. They really are. And so I'm all in on Mizzou stuff. But yeah, I doing Mizzou content. I guess I wonder if people would watch it, and I don't want to piss off too many Cardinals fans. But also, if you're a Cardinals fan, just don't watch the Mizzou stuff. If you're an Illinois fan or whatever, it's fine. Tyler, I'm not showing the columns, but fun story. First day of Hot Take Central, which was the radio show that I recently joined, and then the whole radio station died. But on Friday mornings with Jim the Cat Hayes and Cam Jansen and Cole Bartimas and those guys, I was doing Hot Take Central on Fridays. First day that came up, I said, oh, yeah, I'm a big Mizzou guy. I have the columns tattooed on my back. And they're like, no, you don't. I'm like, yeah, I do. And so I did. First day, took my shirt off, and I was like, see the cat? Here's my columns. And I don't think they knew what to do with that information because they weren't prepared for me to start getting naked on the show. But I was challenged and decided to show them the columns. So that's real. That's a real thing. Rank the players most likely to least likely to be moved, and then rank them in order. Who would get the most back? Most likely to be moved of the three veterans on big contracts, I say would be Sonny, and then Arenado, and then Wilson. I would say Helsley is almost the most likely to be moved of all the four because I just wouldn't understand keeping him unless you extend him. And they're not really in a position to spend money, so I don't know if they're going to be doing that. Yeah, Alexander, I am not a Seminoles fan. Unfortunately, you're in for a rough year, my friend. You already know that, but it's been bleak. Dealing the cards, Mo really wanted us to sell water bottles for one more season. Yep, keep carrying that water, dealing the cards. I know you guys will. Yeah, it was a big day for Cardinals fans. It was a big day. I don't know that it was a great day, but it was a big day. It was a notable day. Nick would like to see Sonny stay. He may be expensive, but he would be a good leader on the staff. We'll see. We'll see if that's how the Cardinals feel about it or if that's not how they feel about it. The money is going to be a big amount to trade, but that means it's a big amount if you get rid of it. And I'd like to think that if the Cardinals get rid of $20 million here, $30 million there, they can spend another 12 and then just try to get some diamonds in the rough with that money. You know, I'm not sure they're going to spend no money. We'll see. We'll see what they do. Davey, I'm glad to see another Mizzou fan in the house. Eric has to admit, I wouldn't be heartbroken trading Gray. Arenado, I think you just have to suck it up and keep him. Gray's interesting, man. It's interesting to me that information from Bob Nightingale comes out before this season's even over. That tells me that there might be some legs to it. And whatever you think of Bob, he's maybe an agent's leaking something, whatever, but he's connected on a lot of things. So it is interesting. 3.12 FIP, though, was fifth in the NL, says Elmir on Sonny. Yeah, he pitched well, but I don't know, man. If they're not looking to contend, I could see a world in which Sonny's a different cat. Sonny's a different cat, and I think he's got that real intense personality that I don't know on a rebuild I just don't know how that's going to work, if that's to the betterment of the team on a rebuild. Allison, thank you for watching and supporting. Justin says the Cardinals need Helsley. Re-sign him. Yep, I think it's going to be very expensive. Hicks got a $44 million contract. Helsley would be more in my guess. So we'll see. Rooting for in the postseason, I would like to see the Royals do well because we talk about them on the radio show, so that'd be kind of fun. I have close relatives who I love that are Braves fans, so I don't mind the Braves doing well. They did win that second game, didn't they? D-backs are out. We were doing the presser, 3-0 win. So, yeah, you're not blowing $60 million on a closer. It's not blowing it, but you're not giving $60 million to a closer when you are rebuilding. It doesn't make any sense, Eric. I agree. So if he wants to start, okay. If not, I just don't think that's the way to play it. So, I mean, Royals, Braves, I just want deep series. I want fun series. I want fun baseball. I'll have it on. A lot of times I'm working from home. I'll have it on all day. I love day games in the playoffs. I always did. Loved it in college because I would drive up there from Columbia and go to the games. Was at the Matt Adams home run off a Kershaw game because of that. So, yeah, I'm ready for some fun. It's so fun when there's postseason baseball going, multiple games per day. I'm excited about the playoffs. I think they're going to be great. Preseason predictions, I'd have to go back and look and see what I actually said. I think I probably had the Orioles in there. I think Phillies or Dodgers. I think Phillies, Dodgers are going to be the two teams that are the toughest to beat in the NL. Tommy Edman will have moments in the playoffs. You can bet on that. Phillies are tough, man. When you know that you've got a Nola Wheeler to throw at teams, that's just so tough. Orioles, I wish Grayson was healthy, Grayson Rodriguez, but, I think without him, they still have Burns. They still have that guy they traded for from the Rays. What's his name? Zach something. Why can't I think of his name? Eflin. So they could still be pretty good. They got to match up with the Royals in the first series, so we'll see. Helsley is still under Cardinals control, just for 1 year, though. It's his last year. He's not a free agent yet, but he's going to be. Huge raise in ARB, Almir. That's right. Yep, Jack Flaherty on the Dodgers as well. Going to be very interesting to see him pitch in the playoffs for sure. Because it could go one of two ways. He could, kind of struggle, or he could just outright dominate and earn himself a big bundle of cash. We'll do some. I mean, look, we can do some playoff baseball streams and talk about kind of some of the stuff going on, because it's not going to be all action in October while the World Series is, before that happens, the Cardinals are going to make a ton of moves. There's going to be news, and we'll talk about it on the channel, but we'll talk about some other stuff too. Maybe some Mizzou stuff. If I could just get in the rhythm of doing a live stream every night at 10, it wouldn't matter what we talk about, and eventually you guys would be like, yeah, I don't care. We'll just hang out. But I haven't gotten that consistency yet, so that's my fault. Be like the Brewers and sign guys like Rhys Hoskins, known studs that are coming off an injury. We know Hoskins is a stud. That was guaranteed great move if healthy. Yeah, I think they should probably spend on those $5 to $7 to $8 million free agent contracts, 1-year deal guys, to just try to fill it out after they trade away the bigger money. And, handpick your veterans that you're going to have be part of a rebuild, right? Like, there's going to be an aspect of that I think makes sense. Sorry. As I said, I'm behind. This is from Clay. So if it's been asked or answered, my bad. But do you think we should try to shop all the big guys, not all Contreras and Gray, or hold on to one or two? I think it'll be up to them. If you trade none of them, that's great, because it means you're not maybe going to slash payroll to the extent that it seemed today like they're going to. But if you trade the first one, you might as well trade the other two. And especially, like, Wilson of the three is the guy I'd most want to see stay, because I think he could bring the most to a retool, a rebuild that doesn't last that long. I think he could bring the most value of the three to that with his attitude and just his approach to the clubhouse, but also his position he plays. Like, what if Ivan Herrera has an offseason like Wilson did, making strides behind the plate? What if he beefs up his throwing regimen and he's passable, throwing out base runners? Herrera could be almost like, I don't know, Wilson Contreras at the plate for $700,000 a year, whatever he makes. That could be so valuable to the Cardinals for the next decade that I don't want to see them throw that away just because they're like, well, we don't really have a place to play him and Contreras and Pages. Like, Herrera could be a kind of guy you build around. And so positionally, I think Wilson never would have been a Cardinal in the first place if Herrera would have had the step forward in 2022 that he had this year from 23 to 24. But Herrera didn't. It took him some extra time. And so the Cardinals were like, shoot, we need a catcher. And so that's kind of the way that ended up going. But I could see a world in which Herrera is someone the Cardinals want to get playing time for. And so if Wilson's upset because there's holes 1 through 9 and they're not going to be replicated and replaced, the Cardinals could go, look, man, we get it. We'll try to find you a place where you can win. But like I said, I also think Wilson could have the most value of those three veterans to being a leading catalyst in a clubhouse that's trying to retool quickly. So we'll see. Almir mentions Carlos Santana at first base if they want a veteran bat on a 1 or 2 year deal. Yeah, I mean, I think largely they are going to need a couple of veterans like that. So we'll see. Eric said, thank God they didn't trade a bunch for Sean Murphy. He's hitting 194 and has a big contract. Yeah, the Brewers won that trade. They had William Contreras fall into their lap in that trade, the 3-team deal, and they didn't give up anything, really. Bill wants to know about Jimmy Crooks as a backup catcher. He'll be a AAA guy next year, but they've got a backup catcher. They've got Herrera, they've got Pages, they've got 3 catchers. They don't need Crooks as a backup catcher, but he could be somebody that eventually makes to the big leagues. So that would be the hope. Herrera legit has a good bat. Want to see him stay and let Pages help the pitchers in AAA grow. I don't think Pages is a AAA player. I think he's a big league catcher who's coming along a little bit with the bat as well. But he's a good backup. I think I would want Pages starting 60, 70 games and Herrera starting, the rest, and you could line that up and make that work. But I'm not trying to shove Wilson Contreras out the door if he wants to be here either. So that's why it's a hard thing to talk about. I hope this makes sense. Ryan says he likes my thoughts on Wilson. So I hope I'm articulating kind of the way I view that. It's not a knock on Wilson. I'm very high on Wilson Contreras. I've said that at every potential opportunity to do so. So there you go. Scott says, I'll tell you what struck me as funny. Hochman asked him a question and he feigned being pissed, but his tone was clearly edgy. Yeah, I don't know. He does that. I think he's kind of trying to be funny to Hochman because he kind of always makes Hochman the punching bag. I don't really like that he does that. I don't think that's fair. But Hochman's been in this business a long time. He can handle it. But it's just kind of like, all right. I think he's trying to kind of be relatable and funny. And look, the people in the media that talk to him more often, we kind of look at that and we're like, all right, we perceive that away. But how's the fan base going to perceive that when you're kind of always bagging on one guy or bagging on a couple of different guys? I don't know. Maybe we're talking more about that than it is, but I think Hockman's probably okay. But I see that. I'm like, all right, come on. I don't know. I think Mo's trying to be funny, but I guess that I'll leave that up to how Hockman feels about it, because that's between him and Mo. But I understand that people watch those videos and they go, "Oh, that's kind of weird. That kind of why did Mo talk to him like that?" I think I've gotten to most of the comments recently. Brian wants Wilson to stick around. He loves the guy. Yeah, man, I could see a world in which Wilson, has a couple of good years and the Cardinals are back to, by 2026, even back to contention, and then they sign him to another contract or something. I don't know. Don't think it's crazy. Brian says, what if they bring Goldie back as staff, not a player next year? I think the notion of taking your players and turning them into coaches before they're ready to retire is not really how that's going to work. I understand the sentiment, though. The odds the Pirates finish with more wins than the Cardinals next year, it's a fair question. I mean, a full year of Paul Skeens is going to help. That's definitely going to help. They've got something the Cardinals don't have, and that's Paul Skeens. But to be fair, really nobody in baseball has one except for them. I was trying to pull up the standings from the Pirate page, and they don't let me. I wouldn't put the standings as an option on my team page either if I were the Pirates. I was just trying to see. They have 76 wins this year. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely probably, I don't know, give them like a... I still refuse to believe the Cardinals are going to be terrible, so I'll give the Pirates like a 42% chance of being better than the Cardinals next year. Tony says, you're not a real Cardinal fan if you support trading Arenado. People don't understand how bad this team will be when they trade him away. Tony, the Cardinals are preparing to be bad next year. That is what's happening. That is what today was all about. 1755 said, I'm the opposite. Trade Wilson. He's a good bat, but is he great with the pitching staff? I don't know. I think he does a good job, personally. Eric adds that they got 83 wins with mediocre seasons from Arenado and Goldie, and their stats can be improved upon. I think their stats will be improved upon. I just don't know if it's going to be here. So we'll see on that as well. Arenado's not a bad piece of a lineup if you were getting more home runs from other positions like Walker and Newt. Yeah. But Walker was, I mean, Arenado and Goldie well underperformed what they needed to be this year. Plain and simple. They're being paid like the highest paid guys on the team, and they underperformed. If they gave their 2023 numbers, Cardinals might have won, 86, 87 games. They'd have been knocking on the door. So I get it. They're not really looking to jump right back into paying Goldschmidt more to not really know what he's going to be next year. So he's probably not going to be back in a world in which the Cardinals are slashing payroll. And then as far as Arenado, to be determined. Mother Jones says 25 payroll will be 120 million. I don't know if it'll be that low, but it could be. Certainly could be. It's like 170 this year, whatever it was. Who starts at third if Arenado was gone? You could go Gorman. You could go Brandon Donovan. If you've got Gorman playing second, you could go Sajasi. Sajasi could start at second. I mean, those three guys jump to mind. The one guy I don't see is Walker. I don't think Walker moves back to third base. I think that ship has sailed. He might not have stuck there anyway if they hadn't moved him to outfield, but who knows? But yeah, Davey, we're going to talk a lot about that kind of stuff if and when these trades happen. Like, you could play the lineup game and it could be really interesting already day one. I could go around and say, like, there's a world in which all the veterans stay. There's a world in which they completely tear it down. But then you look at a lineup and it's like Herrera and Pages behind the plate. And we'll play this game throughout the year, I'm sure. Burleson and Luken Baker platoon at first, with one of the catchers like Wilson maybe getting some extra time at first to get his back in the lineup when they need to. Second base could be, I don't know, could be Gorman, could be Sajasi. Either of those guys could also be third. Donovan could be third or second. Wynn could be short. So between those three second and third basemen, you've got two spots covered and a bench bat. Left field, Nootbaar. Center field, Victor Scott or Ciani. Right field, Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker could DH more. Get Burleson in the outfield on the days that Jordan Walker DHs and Luken's in there. Like, you could do a lot of different iterations, and you could look at that lineup and go, it's not the worst lineup I've ever heard. And so what's the pitching? And then suddenly maybe they do win 80 some odd games. We'll see. Tyler says, even with a teardown, I'm interested to see how the Young Bucks will do. They all performed very decent this year. Yeah, I mean, they didn't all perform decent. Walker got to be better. They'll need to get more out of Victor Scott if he's going to be big league by 25. Gorman certainly has got to be better, but like, maybe he will be. Maybe they'll get more out of some of those guys. We'll see. Is Arenado guaranteed to be traded like Sonny Gray? Neither of them are guaranteed, Tony. I just said I thought Sonny was a little more likely than Nolan, but both could be gone. Neither could be gone. We'll see. We've got a lot to learn about that in the coming weeks for sure. Walker, via his build and athleticism, makes perfect sense in the outfield. He just needs more work. Yeah, right field, he's got a great arm too. So if 25's team says, yeah, we're not prioritizing winning every single game, they'll try Walker out there potentially just to try to see if he can improve and be good enough to be there for a contender someday. Tony said, I don't understand why they would trade Arenado after cutting Goldie and shipping Gray. To lower the payroll, Tony. They don't care if they win next year. That's what the press conference was about today. They are going to prioritize slashing the payroll, not winning. Don't care about winning, do care about less payroll. That would be the reason they would trade all these guys. I'm not saying they're going to, but there's a world in which they would. We're going to see. How long this reset has been discussed. This team didn't play like an 83-win team, but if they fit what they did, what they should have out of top players in 180 to 90, 88 to 90, would they have still reset for next year? Great question, Dustin. Probably not. Probably not. That's why I think it's just more of an excuse. They should have ponied up the extra millions for the minor league infrastructure and then continued this offseason to add and keep the payroll about 170, 180, my opinion. But I would say that this escape hatch has always been built in from the beginning of this season. From last November when they only signed one-year contracts instead of going and getting the Seth Lugo, getting a Michael Wacha on multi-year deals, they got Lynn and Gibson because they were like, if it doesn't work out, we can cut those guys loose and really slash payroll after the season. Goldie can walk, Lynn can walk, Gibson can walk, Arenado can be traded, and maybe even Sonny Gray can be traded. Suddenly your payroll is not nearly as much as it was. If you don't have pressure on Walker, next year will be a lot better. Don't mess with the swing. Just let him go hit. Yep, they need to play him every single day and see where it goes. And Waze is very disappointed in the DeWitts. We'll see. We will see. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate you as always. We'll have more live streams throughout the offseason. There will be more regular daily podcasts going on than there had been in September. Let's be honest, you guys weren't listening to me talk about the September Cardinals anyway, but I think you do want to talk about everything that could be coming. So that'll do it. We will do lots more of these to come. So subscribe and like the stream before you get out of here. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll talk to you next time on Be Safe Daily Live. Peace.